And this is our museum. And in it we have all types of artifacts from the local area. Now, our area is pretty much the school district. And we have the largest school district geographically in the whole state of Wisconsin. Now, most of you are from the Sobieski area, which is on one end. That's that northeast corner. And it goes all the way across out to Hoffa Park, and from the top of the hill in Green Bay, all the way out Green Valley, going that way. So we have a big district, and that's the area the museum covers. But anyway, you are here today to get a little taste of local history. You've been studying Wisconsin history because they target 4th grade, and we're going to be giving all the 4th graders in the school district the same opportunity to come here and hear a little bit about Pulaski, Casimir, and the museum, kind of in that order. So the first thing I'm going to do is explain to you who Casimir Pulaski is, because that's who our town is named after, and why we have a Pulaski when we're in America. And he was born in Poland. He was born, actually his birthday was 3 days ago, the 4th of March, 270 years ago. So he would be a pretty old timer at this point. But unfortunately for him, he only lived 32 years. So he was a young man. But thankfully, he came to America to help us. He started out born in a little town called Warka, Poland. And there's a little glass jar on that table with some earth in it that someone from our area was over in Poland and must have scooped up a baggie full of dirt or something and put it in that glass jar and donated it. So that's Mother Earth over in Poland. He was born to nobility. That's why he was a count, Count Casimir Pulaski. His parents had nobility through their lineage of the name Pulaski, and they had a nice house, and he was well educated as a young man, or a boy actually, and he was taught, you know, all the things he needed to know, including military and how to ride a horse and how to handle weapons, a sword and a musket, all those things. And at the time that he was born, Poland was under what was called Partition, or what they were trying to do with the countries around them. And I have a map here that I'd like you to all take a look at afterwards. I'm going to just lay it on that table. This is a map of Northern Europe, and the exact middle of this picture is Poland. Right in the very middle, the country of Poland. And its northern border is the Baltic Sea, which offered them a port, a world port, and it was squeezed in between Russia and Germany, Czechoslovakia, and even a little bit of Austria over here. And the countries around Poland all wanted to invade their country and take it over and take their natural resources and make the people there pay their taxes to the king or queen of their country. And they kind of all got together and said, well, we'll divide it all up. That's the term partition. Take it all apart and make it part of their country. But the people of Poland, they weren't too keen on that idea. And especially Casimir Pulaski. He says, I don't think so. Not on my watch. So he's like 21 years old. And he is gathering up all the young people that he can and telling them, we need to bind together. There's strength in numbers. And he started a militia of as many people as he could get, mostly young men. And they said, we are not going to let this happen. We have to defend our country from these invaders. And his army kept growing, getting bigger and bigger and stronger, and it was actually working. And he was the leader of that whole group. And he became a hero in Poland because he was fending off mostly Russia. However, Russia said, well, that's enough of that, because that's a big country. They overwhelmed them. They came into Poland and they arrested Casimir and they put him in jail. And that was probably a good thing that they didn't kill him. But what they did do is exile him, which meant they made him leave the country and never come back. And they told him, if you ever do come back, we're going to have to kill you, so just leave. And he did. He went to Turkey, I guess, which is a country not that far away. And he kind of wandered around Turkey and didn't know really what to do. At the same time that this was all taking place, America was in pretty much the same position. England was trying to take over the Americas. They wanted to own our America.
So like a World War One? No,
Well,
Revolutionary.
Well, it was not quite that big as World War One, but it was England, the British, against the immigrants and the settlers of America at that time. So America was thinking, well, we need some help. So they sent Benjamin Franklin over to Paris, France, to try to convince the French to join up and help the Americans fend off the British. Well, Casimir Pulaski heard about this when he was in Turkey. So he got his way over to Paris, France, and met up with Benjamin Franklin. And Benjamin Franklin had also heard about Casimir Pulaski, the exiled brigadier, he wasn't a brigadier general at that time, but the marshal of the freedom forces in Poland, and what a great job he had done at a young age. So Casimir shows up and tells Benjamin Franklin that he's all in. I want to go to America and fight for their freedom. And Benjamin Franklin said, ooh, perfect. You know how to fight on horseback? Just what we need. Here's a letter of recommendation. Take this with you, get on a ship, sail to America. When you get there, find General George Washington and give him this letter, which is what he did. Now that whole thing took like about a year between the time he left Turkey, went to France, sailed over to America. So now he's like 28, 29 years old, and General Washington gets this letter and he says, perfect, I've got a spot for you. I tried to start this cavalry, which is a unit where the soldiers are on horseback. But I've got too much stuff going right now. I can't do a very good job of running all of this and starting to put together a cavalry. So you can do it. And he did. He accepted that. And he gathered some other infantrymen taught him how to ride a horse and how to fight off horseback. And he had his own little division. It was, at that time, it was called like a detachment. And what General Washington would do was have them on the sidelines, kind of hanging back, not part of the main skirmish. But then if they needed some help, they could call in like the reserves to help out. But they meaning the General Washington's army, made an attack on the British in an area called Brandywine. It was the Battle of Brandywine. And the detachment with Casimir in front of it could see what was happening, and that the British had divided up their troops and they started surrounding them. And that's not a good thing. If you're in battle and you've got people on all sides of you shooting at you, it's like fish in a bucket. Not a good thing. So he saw this happening, so he sent one of his riders up there to tell General Washington that you need to retreat like right now and get out of there because they're surrounding you, which General Washington did. And as soon as they turned around and started retreating, Casimir Pulaski's group on horseback rushed in there and held off the English long enough for General Washington to get himself and his troops out of there. And then they wheeled around and got out of there as well. Well, they lost that battle, but they pretty much won the war because George Washington was still alive and still our general who would then become the father of our country. So that episode, Casimir Pulaski saved his life. And Washington was pretty thankful for that, and he immediately gave him a position of brigadier general and gave him more money and more men, and he started a larger force of men on horseback and some infantrymen, and then they were strong enough that General Washington could send him wherever he was needed in our country. And for 2 years, that worked out pretty good. He was 32 years old, and General Washington sent him and his legion, it was called Pulaskis Legion, to Savannah, Georgia. Now, Savannah was a port city down in the Atlantic Ocean, and they were down there to not allow the English to bring in more troops or more supplies. So anyway, he went down there to help with his legion, and that was the last battle he was in because they made an attack or a charge on the British, and they rode right into a whole hail of gunfire and cannon fire, and he was mortally wounded, meaning that the wounds that he received, he died from them at age 32. They actually, he didn't die right away on the battlefield. He was put on a hospital ship in Savannah, in the port, and then that ship would like go out to sea a little ways so that he was out of gunfire range, and then the doctors would work on him, but they couldn't save him. His injuries were too bad, and he died from his injuries, and he was buried at sea. It's a process that the military uses that, they have a ceremony and they just slide him over the side of the boat and weigh him down, and it goes down to the bottom, and that's it. I say that because he's not buried anywhere other than in the ocean. But there are monuments all over the place for him. We honor him because, first of all, he distinguished himself on the field of battle, both in Poland and in America. And in America, he gave up his life for American freedom. And because he did that, and he was such a freedom fighter, that's how we remember him. He's the hero of two nations. Not only ours, America, but also in Poland. So that's why we honor him. You will find there's 7 states that have a Pulaski, a village, a town, city. There are monuments, statues, roads, bridges, parks, highways, all over our country. You'll see the name Pulaski. And that's why you see that. He's being honored for the freedom fighter that he was. And in particular, he saved George Washington's life. This is a picture of him. This is a monument to him in Washington, D.C. And it's more than life-size. This thing is huge, of him on horseback. And you notice one of his horse's feet, his hoof, is off the monument. It's up in the air. That indicates that this warrior died not in battle, but from wounds. Did not die on the battlefield, but he died from his wounds. So his horse only has 1 foot or 1 hoof up. If you see a monument similar to this of somebody else, and both of the front feet are up in the air, that means that that soldier died on the battlefield. Right there. That's the difference. That's just kind of a little side thing to know. If you ever run across some of these monuments, you'll know if he died on the battlefield or from wounds from battle. Okay, that is Casimir Pulaski. That's the history of him. The other thing I want to tell you about is, you know, we are named Pulaski. Okay, why is this? How did this happen? Okay, briefly, the mustachioed guy with the oval picture next to that's Casimir there. That's J.J. Hoff, H-O-F. And he was a Norwegian. And in about 1875 or so, like 25 years before the turn of the 18th century, he was a land salesman. And he worked for the General Land Company, which was, I believe, out of Illinois, Chicago, with an office in Milwaukee. And they sent him up here because they owned pretty much all this land that our school district is, and told him to sell it. Okay, so he come up here and he's looking around and he said, whoa, this is going to be a project, because all that was up here basically were stumps, tree stumps. The lumbering industry came through here first, and they cut everything that was usable, cut it down, and built America with it, and everything that was in it. So he's looking around here and he's thinking, well, you know, the climate is pretty much the same as it is in Poland. You know, we've got 4 seasons, temperatures about the same. And I know that the Polish farmers are pretty crafty farmers. They can farm this because they know how to sow around the stumps, and they can plant alfalfa and grasses and grains, you know, oats, barley, wheat, all those things, and harvest it around the stumps. And then in their spare time, they can remove the stumps one at a time. So he thought, how am I going to get them up here? So, very clever. He says, I'm going to just start naming some of these areas something that they can understand. Like Pulaski, Krakow, that's still the capital of Poland, Zakow,